Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Um, I don't know if people can see me or not. I'm trying to go back and forth between my computer screen, which is video, and my phone, which is audio. So at some point, I'm going to turn off my video because it's really distracting when my lips move like 3 minutes after the words come out of my mouth. And I also think it will improve the audio somewhat. So I just want to say a big welcome and thank you to everybody who came out. It was really nice to see last week when I was at school, so many of you in the neighborhood, as well as all the staff who came in and were helping out both with the internal move and with helping us plan for September. So we spent 3 full days, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, really trying to figure out all the questions we have before we come up with the answers, because like everybody probably on this call, no matter whether you're a student, a family member, or a staff member, we're all gonna have pretty much the same questions, and it's important that we start thinking about what those are now, so that slowly but surely over the summer, we can either come up with our own answers or find the answers from the people who make decisions above us. So, if you're like me, and I'm just guessing that we're all sort of in the same place, like your thoughts, your feelings, your politics, and your general outlook on life is sort of all over the place right now. It sort of depends on what day of the week it is, in terms of how you are starting to see what's going on around us and then what's possible sort of moving forward. So in that sense, I think we're really sort of all in this together. We're also sort of one mind that when we think about our school and moving forward, the number one priority right now is the health and safety of everybody. And when I mean everybody, I mean the students, and I mean the families, and I mean the staff, and anybody else who comes into contact with our community members, or also within our building. But I think we're also of one mind that we are 100% committed to continue to collaborate on providing sort of the very best education for our children. And it's different now. Let's be real, let's be honest. It's no longer that families send their kids to school and our staff provide the very best quality education. Now it is truly a combined and collaborative effort. Before, families would say we can't live without the teachers, and now more than ever we're going to say right back at you, we cannot live without the families. You are absolutely critical to this work. You've been amazing in everything that's gone on since March, and we accept the fact that this is going to be part of the new reality when it comes to teaching and learning for our children. Jen, can you go to the next slide, please? So our agenda for this evening looks like this. I'm just going to start off with basically an overview of some of the things that we've been working on and some of the questions you might be anticipating. We're going to then shift into a discussion around health and safety, led by our BRT member and our 29 or 30-year veteran teacher, Miss Medina. After that, we're going to get really to the heart of this call, this town hall, which is to talk a little bit about what school programming will look like in September. So what a day in the life will look like for students and for families, and Ms. Degano will lead us through that part of the conversation. Then Ms. Gandy will talk a little bit about what some after-school options might look like in September. And then finally, Ms. Reyes, our parent coordinator, is going to walk us through something that's absolutely critical, which is that all students and families log into and create their iLearn and their NYC student accounts. And this must happen at some point, and preferably before school opens. So I beg you to stick around if you're a parent to hear what Ms. Reyes has to say if you haven't done these things already. And then finally, at the end, we will have a question and answer period. I know that probably right off the bat, people have 100 questions, and I'm guessing they're the same ones that I have, and I probably have asked my supervisors about, but maybe, just maybe throughout this presentation, some of those questions will be answered. So I'm just gonna ask that you place those questions in the chat box and feel free to write whatever you want. And at the end, Ms. Jimenez is gonna sort of collate or gather those questions and feed them back to myself and other members of this team as presenting tonight. And we're gonna do our very best to answer those questions. If we cannot answer those questions, we are going to keep a list of them, and we are going to continue to solve questions and problems as we can and as we get more information. So Jen, could you turn us to the next slide, please? So very basically, tonight on July 21st, I think it is, we are going to share what we know and be very honest about what we do not know. And that is considerable at this point. And I don't want to point fingers. I don't want to blame anybody. What right now, making the big decisions, if you're the governor, if you're the mayor, if you're the chancellor, it's really hard. And I can't imagine being them right now because there's just so much unknown. There's so much that's changing. And absolutely no decision they make is going to please everyone. And I can feel that. Like I know that when it comes down to what we need to choose to do, or what we decide for what's best for our school, I am really hoping that it will work to the needs of most of our families and our students and our staff, but knowing full well that that's almost impossible. So in a minute, I'm going to share with you some of the feedback that we got from families about what they want and what they're looking for in September. And I want that to be sort of a starting point for continued dialogue around what we can do to make sure that we do our very best to meet everybody's needs. It's almost a given that everything will change before September. If we look around at what's happening in the country right now, about where COVID is most active, and we think in May, it's possible everything we decide to do right additions may have to change. So at the very end, we're going to provide a Spanish translation and question and answer. So I encourage people to stick around. And Estrella, would you please just jump in really quick and just translate that part for our families?
Jimenez, can you just unmute Estrella? You're good, Estrella.
Buenas tardes, familias de la 108. Después de esta presentación que está dando el principal Bill, si ustedes quieren tener traducción en español para todo lo que él va a decir hoy, por favor quédense después de la presentación y se les va a traducir en totalidad su presentación. Gracias.
And I just please, as you're on the line or unmuted, can you just please offer my apologies for not doing simultaneous translation, not just in Spanish, but any of the languages that may be the first languages of our families. It's just, I haven't figured out how to do this really well through Zoom and through virtual conversations. And it's something I'm committed to doing better in the future. But right now, this is what we're able to do. And so I just want to offer my apologies.
De antemano, el señor Bill quiere darle sus disculpas por no haber preparado esto en inglés o en español a la misma vez. Todo esto es nuevo para nosotros. Se nos hizo muy rápido hacer las cosas, o de antemano le pedimos disculpas a ustedes, pero por favor quédense después si ustedes necesitan traducción o tienen algunas preguntas. Estamos aquí después de esta presentación. Gracias.
Thank you. Jen, next slide, please. So in terms of conversation or dialogue or sharing of information, I really, really want to encourage people to take advantage of our social media platforms. This is the way that we can communicate most directly and most immediately with families. And in this day and age, I would hope that people would have access to at least one of these means to gather and get the information from our school. So very quickly, the top bar is our website. And big, huge thank you to Ms. Jimenez, who keeps that up to date on a daily basis with information from the chancellor on down to myself and the classroom teachers. So that's the first place to go whenever you're looking for the most current information. After that, if you recognize the icons, is our Instagram account, followed by our Twitter account and our Facebook account. And the very last bar is our email address that you can send and that we monitor for any questions you have about anything. And when we see what the question is, we will direct it to the person most appropriate for answering the questions or responding to the concern. A few general announcements very quickly. I don't think she's on the call, but I do want to let everybody know and offer a welcome to our new District 4 superintendent. You may know that Alexander Estrella, who had been the superintendent for several years, has moved on to become the superintendent of Norwalk, Connecticut schools. And our new superintendent he came on board just last week is Dr. Christy De La Cruz. She has worked in the Bronx prior, as well as many other roles throughout the city of New York. So we'll get to know her better as time goes on, but just wanted to let you know that we do have a new superintendent. The second bullet, there is no school calendar published yet, but we do know that as of today, the first day of school is going to be September 10th or 11th. And that's going to depend on the group that your child is in. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The big idea here is that not all kids will be in the building at the same time. We're going to stagger them. More or less half will be in the building one day, half will be there the next day. So depending on your group, your first day will either be on September 10th or the 11th. They'll get exactly the same experience and instruction. They just will come on a different day. And then the last thing, and this is really important, I scheduled a follow-up town meeting for August 25th, same time at 6:30. Would imagine that by then we'll know a lot more, and I'll have a lot more useful information to share with you. Next slide, please. Okay, this meeting is being recorded, hopefully, and will be archived along with the slideshow that we're sharing on our website. So if you know people who didn't get to log on and join in, you can direct them to the website and they get all the same information. As I mentioned before, any questions that you have, please put in the chat box and we will come back to them at the end of the presentation. We'll know by the end of the presentation if we were able to answer your questions or not. So Ms. Jimenez is going to sort of monitor which ones are still sort of outstanding or touch on things that I didn't or any of our team members did not address. Next slide, please. Okay, this is going to take a minute, but it's important. Every family member and every student in grades 6 through 12 were able to fill out a survey over the last few weeks called the Return to School Survey. And I'm going to share with you some of the highlights that our families and our kids shared with us, because that's some of the information we were using to think about the best ways to accommodate kids and to open up our school in September. So this is really reflective of our community. It was about 15% of our population, which is not great, but it's also a good way to sort of get a barometer of where our families are at.
it was interesting that both students who did it independent of their families had very similar responses. So I'm not going to break it down by student versus family. I'm going to share basically one statistic that represents both. The first one is that 63% of our families are not or only a little bit comfortable with returning to school in September. That's a huge number, and it was really surprising to me. You'll notice that the next part says only 46 people citywide felt that way. So at 108, many more families are really thinking hard about whether they want their child in a school during this COVID crisis in September. Very interesting, very informative, very useful for us to know that. And I'll talk more about that later. 52% are suggesting their child is comfortable or very comfortable wearing a mask in school. And I think most of you very quickly are thinking, well, what about the other 48% who are not comfortable? And that is a big, big concern. And Ms. Medina is going to talk about it a little bit later, about what it means for everybody to wear or not wear a mask. And that's something that we have to really work hard at, trying to move that number up so that it's closer to 100% in order to keep everybody safe. I understand the arguments against it, but it's just going to be very difficult to maintain the health and safety of our school if people are not doing the one basic thing that we know makes a difference, which is wearing a mask. The next bullet is really important. It's important to the point where the mayor is committing to providing options for these families. 35% of our families need childcare when their students are not in school. I expected much higher numbers because I know that's a real need. And if there's anything that we can do, we are going to assist in making sure that we find other options for childcare when your kids are not in our building. So I've already been in conversation with other institutions in the neighborhood about providing alternative care for when, again, your kids are not in 108. Final bullet on this page is 86% of families want temperature checks at the door, which is something that we are awaiting final guidance on. But right now we assume that when you enter the building, you will get one of those things that points at your forehead and gives immediate temperature reading. Not like a thermometer, but something much simpler and much quicker. And I think that's really important to just make sure that if you're coming in the building, you're not already exhibiting symptoms. Continuing on with the survey highlights, 77% want alternating day schedules. And we're going to talk a lot more about this when Ms. Togano presents, meaning kids will come every other day. They will not be coming 5 days a week. That is not an option that the mayor or the chancellor is providing for schools, understandably, since we need to concern ourselves with social distancing. 80% of people want all staff and students to wear masks. 70% of respondents want students to only interact with classmates and not travel within the building. This is really important, and it's something that we are really working hard and struggling with, which is to create a program and a schedule in the building where only teachers move as much as possible and the students basically stay in one room. It is not ideal. It is not what we would normally want. We want students up and about, moving around, changing scenery. But this is like some very strong guidance we're getting that to keep people safe, they need to interact as least as possible with other people in the building. The second to last bullet is 41% want students to learn full-time from home. I'm going to share with you in a minute, if you haven't done it already and you're interested, an option, a way to decide and to inform us that that is your choice. 74% want the focus of learning to be on the core subjects. This is something I would expect, but what it means is that if students can only be in school 2 days, maybe 3 days a week, they want that time spent on the core subjects and not the other subjects. Even though we all would agree they're important, under these circumstances, this is what people are asking for. Next bullet, Jen. Next slide. And the last two things that came out of the survey that I found important to share with you was that 78% want a variety of instructional learning opportunities. I think we would all agree with this for the most part, especially the teachers and other staff, that we don't want students just on their electronic device. I think it's important that we use technology. I think it's important we learn how to use technology well, but it's not the only way to learn, and we have to be even more creative. And again, in collaboration with families about ways for students to learn at home that do not involve just being on their device all day. And then the last bullet's really important too, that at least 55% of people want live instruction at least once per day. That is something that we are working towards. It was difficult to do it in the beginning, back in March and April. There were rules about that, but those rules are changing. So I would say that you could expect that this will probably be the reality, that at least once a day, if you're at remote learning, you will be able to have live instruction. So if you're a family and you decide, based on what you already were thinking or some of what I've been sharing, that you want your child to only learn from home like they've done from March through June, you have that option. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to explain. You can do that, but you must fill out this survey link that's on this screen, and we're going to put it in the chat box. It's also on our website, but it must be filled out by August 7th. And I need to say something more about this, which is also very, very important. And that is, if you choose to learn remotely, again, that's your option. But if you change your mind, which you also have the right to, you will only be able to send your kids back to school when the Department of Education opens up windows of opportunity in the fall. Meaning you can't just do it any day. There'll be like a 2 or 3 day period where they say, okay, now you can change your mind. And then you will be given a program like everybody else where you'll be part-time at home and part-time at school. Next slide, please. All right, so we listened to you. We're incorporating what you said to us, but that's not the only information that we're working with. Like I said earlier, that we spent a lot of time together last week at school trying to figure this whole thing out, and it's a puzzle. Like, it's a very complicated puzzle. Nobody's ever done this before. In some ways it's exciting, but in some ways it's also really hard and frustrating. So we take into account what people want, but we also have to consider these things: the size of our building, the square footage of our classrooms, and it turns out that our classrooms are on the small side, and then the number of students per grade we have, and then the social distancing guidelines. You'll see later on that one of the key pieces of information that we were working with is that every person requires 65 square feet of space in a room. That's not our choice, that is what we are told. And based on that, we can determine how many kids can be in a classroom at a time with adults, because the adults need their 65 square feet too. And then based on that, how many shifts of kids we have to rotate through based on our school and our grade populations. So that's really complicated, but we're working on it, and Ms. Tagano will say more. Next slide, please. All right. I hope I said it before. If not, I want to say it again and again and again, that we really appreciate how much families have chipped in and done incredible work at home, subbing for teachers, because the kids could not go to school normally and be in a classroom normally with their teachers normally. So that was hard work. I know it. I heard from a lot of families, and it was what we could do under the circumstances. And we did it overnight, because someday in late March, we were told, go home and don't come back, but continue with school. And our staff did incredible work trying to rebuild our school in the sky, literally. And it was what it was. Like, I was really proud of what we accomplished. It was far from perfect, but we learned a lot. We learned a lot. And we're going to take what we learned and we're going to prepare for the next time this happens. And we're going to do it two ways. The first way, we're going to prepare and plan what we're calling a boot camp for students, meaning that for the first several days that they're back in school, we are going to train them on what it means to be a remote learner and how to be successful at that type of learning. And again, kids did what they could based on what they knew in the spring, but now they're going to be trained on how to learn remotely. And there's a lot goes into that. And this isn't just about like trying to get through the next COVID crisis. This is about what it actually means to be a 21st century learner. So I don't think this is a waste of time or it's just because it's a crisis. I think this is really critical. These are really critical skills that our kids need. So I'm excited about this piece. The second piece is we're going to support the families in a much more comprehensive way. We are working on a handbook that we will deliver that sort of gives details about how best to work with certain applications, how best to support a learning environment for kids at home, and any number of other things that we have heard people through their frustrations, their questions, and their successes. Because I have to be honest, like, people have done really remarkable things at home that we are learning from and we are going to share with other parents. And connected to the handbook will be workshops for parents on how to support their remote learners at home. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Medina, who's going to talk a little bit about safety. I appreciate your patience in letting me get through my slides. I'm obviously going to stay on this call and I'm going to be here at the end to answer any of the questions that I haven't had a chance to look at, but I know Ms. Jimenez is monitoring. So Ms. Jimenez, if you could just unmute Ms. Medina, and I'm going to let Ms. Medina take it from here.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Does everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to start off by saying that it's everyone, we are concerned about everyone who enters our building, okay? That means everyone's temperature will be checked, whether you're a staff, a student, a parent, someone delivering. Everyone's temperature will be checked. According to the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, they are highly recommending and saying how important it is for everyone to wear a mask. The students to wear a mask, the teachers to wear a mask. That is something that we feel very strongly about as part of what's going to happen at 108. It is going to be encouraged, and we will like to have 100% of everyone wearing a mask. And if there is an issue, we will speak to whoever have issues privately. Classrooms will be cleaned every night. Like it's written there, the rooms will be provided with sanitizer. We will encourage social distancing with staff as well as with students. What's extremely important, parents, is that I need you to inform the teachers if your child suffers from asthma or allergies, especially food allergies, because part of what's going to happen is breakfast and lunch will be in the classroom. It is also important that you register with Mount Sinai and Angela. She should be aware of what's going on. It's also important, parents, that you update. I can't stress this enough, that you update the information. We need to have current phone numbers. We need to have current emails. We need to know who is allowed to pick up your child and who is not allowed to pick up your child. This is not the time now where if we have to get a hold of you for whatever reason and we cannot get a hold of you, we're gonna have to go to the next level. And we don't wanna do that. So it is extremely important that you update all your information with us because we don't know. We don't know if, like Mr. Gladstone said, if we're going to start in September and then 2 weeks down the line, they're going to say to us, well, you know what? Everyone has to do remote again. So it is extremely important that you give us all the information that we need to know about your child and how we can get a hold of you. If someone does get sick, we will be sending them to the nurse and then we're going to be taking it from there. I think that's about anything I have to say for now because again, this can change. So if you have any questions, please just make sure you write it on the chat and then we will address it when we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. Hi, everybody. Ms. Jimenez, can you mute everybody except for me? Just because I hear background noise. I don't know if it's multi-seater. I know that there is lots of questions, lots of frustration, lots of feelings going on right now. And I see it in the chat and we hear you. I want you to know, like, we understand everybody's perspective on this. And I guess that's why they're trying to provide different options because everybody does have different feelings about, you know, going back into the building. And so we are completely with you. And as Bill said, you know, unfortunately, some of these things are in our control and some of them are not in our control. So we are doing the absolute very best that we can with the things that are in our control. But the things that you're bringing up are extremely valid and we appreciate your feedback. So in terms of the scheduling, the option that the DOE is, if you choose to have your child not be a remote learner, the option that works best for elementary and middle school for our school would be that kids would come in 2 days a week, 1 week, and 3 days a week, another week. One of the things that we would ask of you, because we have gone back and forth and your suggestions on this, I know it's not, you know, a major decision, but it is something that we really would like your input in, would you prefer your kids going in 2 days a week in a row or like alternating days? Because we have gone back and forth about what would be, you know, the pros and cons of both, right? Having a kid in Monday, Tuesday could mean that they're not in Thursday, Friday, and Monday. So that's something that is to consider that we do have an option of. And then the other one is if it was, so every other week, your child would go a third day. And what day of the week could that be? So for example, all the kids in group A would go Tuesday, Thursday. All the kids in group B would go Wednesday, Friday. But then every Monday it would change. Group A would come in one day, then the next Monday group B would come in. So that's something if you could put in the chat, like, you know, so if you're, as a parent, what would you prefer? We do, I saw in the chat, and we definitely did think about this. We are putting together a list of siblings. So the goal is that all of your kids would come to school, would either be in group A or group B. So that is what we will manage that, because I know that's a really important thing for families, especially if you have older kids watching younger kids. So that is definitely something that we can do. All families will have the same, will be in either group A or in group B. As Bill said, the teachers will be moving and not the kids. There will be the cafeteria space. None of the large spaces will be used. So there is no, like, kids will not be. We did an entire survey of our building, and most of our buildings are, most of the classes in our building will only allow for 8 kids at a time. There are a few rooms, obviously our pre-K rooms are very big, that will allow for like 10 to 11, but most of our rooms will only have at the most 8 children at a time in it with either one adult or sometimes two adults. The only rooms, and I believe that they said we could do for phys ed, which we're trying to do more at the end of the day or the beginning, could be either outside, because they're recommending that outside at this point is a safer place to be in a large space. It still would not be more than 15 kids if it was a gym phys ed situation, because that's a much bigger space and they would maybe be outside or in a larger area. They could, again, I don't want to say would, because just everything can, change. So I'm not really getting attached to anything, because, you get attached to an idea and then something comes and it changes it. So I think the biggest thing I've learned from this experience is like, you have to be flexible and just not get, for me, and I'm not saying for you not to get frustrated because I totally get it. But for me, it's like, oh, when they change things and we have to rearrange things, we have to be understanding, because the goal is to do things the best way that we can. And that requires, that's going to keep changing, right? What today looks like is not what August 25th is going to look like. And whether we have to scrap an entire schedule to make a new one because it's a better thing, because it's better for children, then that's what we have to do. So if an idea comes out that's better, we will adopt a better plan. So we are very open, and we know that things are going to keep changing, and we are prepared, to go with changes. So the cafeteria will not be used. Students would have lunch in the classroom, and they would be monitored by a staff member in the classroom. And lunch meeting and students, yeah. So we are asking your opinion in the chat box, just putting, would you prefer back-to-back days or like a day in between? And the day in between would be remote, So the kids would work the way they were working, similarly to when they were working in the spring. I do think when we say exciting, like nothing is exciting about lives being turned upside down, the devastation, like it has been awful. I do think that the use of technology when we do come back into school, because we eventually will be back into school, whenever that is, I don't know. But when that happens, I think that our teachers and your kids and all of you have been so supportive. I don't know how you do it as parents. Like all of spring, I was waking up being thankful that I didn't have multiple young kids at home, that I had to work and teach and do my job. And I know that's not the case for many of you. And I admire you so very much. Like so many of you, like you're essential workers, or you have small children. And I think one parent said, if you're the parent of a kindergartner and a first grader or even younger, like this has been super overwhelming. I cannot even imagine. So I do thank you. Nobody thinks that remote learning is what is, the best option for our kids. But if it's remote learning or safety, that's the choice. That's what the choice we're giving parents. If you do, if that's how you feel, they can either come in or they can choose to do remote. And we know that that isn't, the greatest option, but we are going to do our very best, and we are committed to making remote learning better than it was in the spring. And I have to say, our teachers went from 0 to 100, and I think they did a fantastic job. And like Bill said, it was not perfect, but we did learn a lot of things that we can now start off in September knowing so much more. So we did learn a lot that we will be implementing in September for remote learning. So I want to say thank you, and we appreciate all of you. You have no idea how much we appreciate you and how much we are working to support you and your kids. Okay, and now Miss Gandy is going to, again, just put questions about the programming in the chat, and I'll look at them, we'll answer them after. And Miss Gandy is going to talk a little bit about after school. So Miss Jimenez, can you unmute Miss Gandy?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here in our town hall. Many of you know me, of course, as the community school director and the director for our after school program, the 21st Century Leadership Program. And, you know, I just want to say it's hard not being with your kids. I miss them so much, running around there. But we've actually been, though it's been a lot of uncertainties, one thing that is really certain is that we can provide some sort of programming, enrichment program. What it will look like, you know, really depends on a number of things because we have all these uncertainties. But we are committed to really just providing a program that is going to support, you know, and give resources that match what you as families need and what your kids need. So over the summer, I've been working with the leadership program as well as our other partners and discussing, you know, if we have a hybrid school situation like we've just discussed earlier, what that would look like for after school programming. Of course, we have to be creative. You know, some of the ideas are offering virtual after school, maybe during the days where students are on site, maybe using the yard. You know, we're gonna have small groups. Some of the partner organizations possibly hosting some kids to be able to go to their space, like Asphalt Green, the athletics, or maybe even during the day doing some sort of programming instead of making it in after school hours, but having some sort of programming that can be done during the day. So I guess whether it's arts or like fitness programs or cooking, mentoring or tutoring, whatever the program is, what we're planning now are interactive live enrichment classes. So we did this in March, the leadership program. We did virtual singing. We did a cooking from home class, fitness, photography, yoga and meditation and dance. And it was interactive. So that for sure, we know we want it to be like that. So it's not something that's just remote. But we are, you know, we are able to provide after school, but right now we just have to really wait and see from the DOE and Office of Community Schools if we can even bring teaching artists into the building. Because, you know, our first and foremost priority is the safety of the kids. And so we might not be able to do that. So we're just looking at really creative ways. I have to say though, that all of the after school teachers and the partners love your kids, as do I. And they already have a plan for doing a really dynamic virtual after school enrichment program in September. So for sure, that's something that we can offer. But it would be great to hear from you, you know, regarding your thoughts. Like, I'd like to know, like, what do you think? Do you think it's helpful to have some sort of after school program after a full day? Or would you prefer having more things during the day? Or do you think, you know, having something, if we're allowed to bring people on site, is something that you'd want to have? So those things, any feedback you can give will be great, but I just want you to know that we are planning a dynamic virtual after school at this point until we can hear what exactly we can do in terms of bringing people in the building. So just stay tuned and thank you.
Thank you, Myra. We miss all the kids. We
So
miss
much.
Phoenix so much. We miss
So
all
much.
the kids so much. That's why it was so nice when they were like, some of the kids were going online live during the day. And it was so, Bill and I, like, we loved just going in and saying hello to kids and seeing them.
I miss them so much. I miss the sound and the energy of all the wonderful kids. So that's what we want first. We really would love to be in the building, but of course we want everybody to be safe.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Miss Estrella Reyes is going to talk about iLearn and the NYC student accounts.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Estrella Reyes. I am the parent coordinator at PSMS 108. I wanted to talk to you guys a little about the platform for iLearn. iLearn is a new platform that is working right now for summer school, but moving forward, we're going to be using this platform. So Jen, if you can go to the next one. It's just, I kind of did it. This is a presentation that I turned over in a summer workshop that I did. So with the English and Spanish, that's why my presentation is a little bit different. I reused it, sorry. So iLearn is an online learning portal designed to broaden and enhance your school's course offerings. It's available for all grades, and that's what's great about it. It has, and in the next slide, I'll show you, it has a whole bunch of apps that many teachers have been using. And instead of going out of the Google Meet that you guys have been used to, it's right all in there. So can you go on to the next slide? So one of the troubles that, well, not trouble, one of the things first that you have to do is actually do sign up for a username and do a password yourself. And this is the link that you would use in order to do to have a username. I'm sorry. It would be the OSIS number, which can be provided if you don't have it. If you have your child's report card, it's on the report card. If you don't have it, you can reach out to me. If you don't have it, you can reach out to your teacher as well. It would ask you for the OSIS number and the date of birth. After that, it will generate an automatic username, and you create your own password, something you can remember. So just write it down. So when you've created that, the website to go to automatically is teachhubschools.newyorkcity, and I have also put on the website there, and this is the screen page you'll see. It'll ask you to sign in and then the password. And these are the fun apps that are in iLearn, which is, I find it very cool. It has Google Meet in there, it has Zoom, it has a whole bunch of apps that your teachers are already going to use with them. So it becomes a little bit easier for children. I have 3 at home, and sometimes the math app was not working, or she didn't find it, or he didn't find it. It's been hard. So the DOE has set something up, a platform where everything is included. You can go on to the next one. And then that's another part of the apps that are on there. There's Zoom already in there for you guys. There's Teams. I like these because everything is in one. We don't have to go out anywhere. I mean, for children that are smaller, my children are small, so it's basically easy. It's easy. It's easy. And this is what you'll see once you log on. I did it again. I showed the presentation. I showed this presentation for summer. So this is the summer school page, and if you can see on the top, it says STC, which is a website, and then Teach Hub. I'm sorry, I'm blind. These are just things you can go into as well, but this is basically the main page you will see. Obviously, this is for summer, and then you'll go in it, and it'll give you the courses. It'll give you and the teacher will put in the work there. They'll submit it. Students can submit it in there. You can send a message through there. I mean, this is just all in one platform. I think it's great. A lot of children have used it, and it's working out great. It's just all in one access, which I love. These are the help desk for iLearn, and like Mr. Bill said in the beginning, this is going to be on our website, so you can just go back to it on our website. The help desk, the email support. Also, what I did for some of the parents is, I know for me, sometimes it's complicated, so what I did is I put YouTube videos. But really, once you go in there and once you play with the apps, it's very easy to kind of get into. And I say it's very easy. I have a 6 and a 7-year-old, and they were able to maneuver it pretty well. So that's where I get my expertise from. Like, is it easy? Is it hard? That's where I get it from. I ask them to go in it. You can go on to the next one. This is for Spanish-speaking parents. I also put it up there. It's basically the same information.
Do you need to share your screen, Estrella, for the other slides?
No, I added them on. They're on there. I'm not sure why it's not coming up. Okay.
I have to refresh my screen. But can you start talking about the NYC accounts, and then I'll bring the screen back?
Yep. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about is the New York City student accounts. And on the slide, I put the website as well. The New York Student City accounts, it's another portal, basically, that it can show your child's grades on there, their attendance, their reading level, their promotion tracker. I'm not sure if, I know there's a percentage of parents that have logged on to this account, but a very small percentage of it. And for this, you'll need an access code, which we as well, your teachers have the access code, and so do I. So you can reach out to myself, the parent coordinator, or your teachers. Hey, listen, I want to get an access code to go on to New York Student City account. It's gonna ask you for your email, for your name, and then it's gonna ask you as well for an OSIS number and the access number, and you can go in and create your own account for your children. I have it for both of my children there, and it'll tell me that's how I received my child's report card. And I'll see like what reading level they're on, how many days they've missed. It shows the attendance. It's very good. This account, this portal actually was way before the pandemic. And actually, since I already had it, it was already a good way that the teachers were able to hand over the report cards. I was able to see there the tracker, how they were doing. Were you able to get it up?
So I wasn't able to, but we can put it on our slideshow. And if you don't have access to the NYC account, if you put your email in the chat, we have the letter that we can send you. It has the directions. It has your personal PIN number that you need in order to access it. But it really is a great, if you've been a long time DOE parent, if you ever had ARIS many years ago, it's similar to what that is. And it really is a great opportunity to get your kids like live attendance. It updates every week. So you can see it on your own. You can see their grades. You can see their immunization records. You can see their busing information.
Are you able to see my screen?
Oh, good. Perfect.
Okay. So this is the account. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Can you go to view present, Estrella?
Yep. There we go. So this is the slide okay. This is the account we were talking about. Again, the link is on. I put it up there for you guys. So it's just gonna ask you for your first name, your last name, your email address, and then it'll ask you to validate it. It'll just gonna send you an email to your email address. And then from there, you're gonna put in the creation code, which is the letter that Mr. Gano was talking about. And from there, you'll be able to go on it. You'll also need your OSIS number, which is something, like I said, if you have your report card available, you can you can get it from there as well. That's the first page you'll see. And then the next one will bring you out to this. When you have created one already, you put in the email and the password, and then you have to click on I have read and agreed the privacy policy, and then just sign in. And then this is what you'll see. You'll see, like I said, you'll see your grades, the assessment, the schedule, the health, the reading level, the attendance there. I wasn't able to grab everything, but it has a whole bunch of stuff if you guys can see. This is the New York City Schools account, which is, I think it's a good, I think it was a good tool before, obviously, we went on to other stuff. Okay.
Thank you. Oh, you can leave that one up if you want.
Okay.
Unless you want us to just see your face.
Am I off? I'm good?
Well, you can share your screen and just keep that question and answer page up from the
Okay.
slide. Okay. Bill, do you want to come back and field some of the questions? I think he's muted, Miss Jimenez. You have to unmute the bit. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So big thank you to everybody who hung in there. I I know that was a long presentation. We had a lot of stuff that we wanted to share with you. I hope it was useful. I know there are still so many unanswered questions. I just want to give a shout out to Ophelia Avila, who put in the chat box, and I quote, "We are in a messed up situation." And I couldn't agree more. There are days where I wake up and I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do this. This is really hard. And I completely echo some of the frustrations I'm feeling, and that's coming through some of the comments in the chat box. I get it, but we don't have a choice. Like, we have to make this work somehow. And so that's what we're committing our time and energy and effort to figure this thing out one way or another. And we are working with what we have, and we are working under the guidance of other people who are making decisions on their based on their needs and their timelines and things that, again, that we don't have a lot of control over. But there are some things we do have control over, and that's what I'm at least trying to work through this summer and then the weeks ahead. So please come back. We're not going to be done, but I just want to remind people, please come back on August 25th. There's going to be a lot more, presumably, to share with people. But Ms. Jimenez, if you want, just sort of start to share with me some of the questions that came up in the chat box. I couldn't see all of them as the presentation was going on.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, someone has a major concern. How is school going to determine what students are moving up in grade?
So all students have already moved up in grade. There's a related question that's that's something I'm worried about and thinking about, which is what grading policy will look like and promotion policy will look like next year between people who are only learning remote and kids who are at least in school part-time. So that is definitely on my list of bigger questions that we need answers to before we begin the school year. So I'm just, listen, I know sometimes I'm not gonna, in this Q&A, I'm not gonna give people the answers they need or want, and I'm just gonna have to admit that. So, and all I can do is say that this is something that I will keep notes of and work on moving forward.
Okay, can you remind parents how many kids can be in a classroom?
It depends on the size of the classroom and then in the math of how many kids are in that class and in that grade. It's really anywhere between like 8 to 11 people. So that includes teacher and other staff that will be in the room at the same time. And that's based on 65 square feet per person. So we actually went and we measured last week every single classroom just to be sure of what the square footage was. And then we figured out, based on each classroom, and they're all different, how many kids could be in that classroom and how we could maximize the number of people in the classroom.
Okay, how can parents manage their kids at home during remote learning days? They need guidance and support.
I agree. And again, I think it was different for everybody, but I think overall it was hard for most, and I get it. I'm a father of 2 people, and I can't even imagine being their home instructor. So we are committed to doing more workshops early on in the year, like I said, and providing a handbook for families, at least in terms of giving them the basics on how to support kids at home. It won't be everything you need. And we certainly could use input on what else could be included and what's missing from it. And then Estrella, our parent coordinator, will be conducting workshops both in person and virtually around the topics of supporting kids at home.
Okay, we have a clarifying question about breakfast and lunches. Will they still be provided, and how will the children access the meals?
Very good question, and something that is going to be a real pain, but we're going to make it happen, is students will pick up their breakfast in the morning and they'll take them to class, and they will have lunch provided to them in the classroom. So the cafeteria will no longer be a gathering place for lots of kids at one time, all eating at the same time. Likewise, there will be no recess where lots of kids are running into each other and sneezing on each other in the playground. This is sad because it's what kids need, especially kids in the age range that we service. But those, again, are things that are not in our control. So we follow the guidelines.
Okay. Why can't older students who have more control of their actions do remote learning unless there is a legit reason why they shouldn't?
I saw that. I love that question. So shout out to whoever posted that question. We are really trying to be as creative as possible with getting the kids who need more support in the building more often. And a good example of that is like 3K and 4K. Those children desperately need to be in a social environment and with their teachers live. Not that being at home with their parents isn't fine also, but it's really critical at that age to be in school. So we're looking at how we can try to expand options for those younger kids to come in. Likewise, for younger kids who are struggling with learning how to read, this is the most critical time in their lives, and everything they do right now about learning how to read will influence what happens throughout their academic careers. I want them in the building more. And so we have to juggle it and figure out, well, if certain kids need more services, to that person's point, well, maybe the middle schoolers, perhaps, this isn't necessarily a truth, perhaps could be learning remotely more often. So we are playing with all options, and we are seeking permission to do things differently than the models that Ms. Degano shared with you that were recommended, as you can see in the text, by the Chancellor.
Okay, most of the questions are surrounding masks. Can't imagine how children are going to wear masks for 8 hours when adults have an issue wearing them as well.
Listen, I get it. I can't stand wearing masks. They fog up my glasses, and I just get really uncomfortable with them. I don't know what to say other than the fact that COVID is deadly. COVID took my mother a few months ago. Like, it's very real to me. So it's not an abstraction that this thing is just sort of out there, but it's not like going to get me. And many of us got sick at the end of March because we kept the schools open a little bit longer. Had we known then what we know now, and we'd all worn masks, many of us wouldn't have gotten sick. So I can't tell you how serious I think it is that people who are in the building at any given time around other people really need to wear masks. So I don't know what that's going to mean for little kids who can't keep it on, or for kids who have medical reasons for not keeping it on. I don't have answers to those questions. I just need everybody's cooperation in making sure that we encourage people to wear masks as much as possible.
Okay. Not sure if this is the classes or the school day, but they're asking, can classes be part-time?
No, that's a very good question, and it's something we asked right away. We thought we could have like half-day schedules, but because of the requirement that every classroom must be deep cleaned every single day, meaning in this case at night, there's no way that we could do that in between two different sessions on the same day, where the whole school gets cleaned before the next group comes in, and then they get cleaned again at the end of the day. So we are not given that option by the city, even though in many ways I think it's a very good option if we didn't have to worry about the cleaning of classrooms.
Okay, there's a question on attendance. Will attendance be a factor come September?
Not sure exactly the meaning of that question, but I will talk about attendance for a minute, and maybe it will answer the question. Attendance is tricky, and this was a real problem for us in the spring. And we kind of had to, again, based on what the Department of Education told us, we had to kind of keep shifting our policy a little bit. And I wasn't ever really comfortable with it. On the other hand, I didn't want to like overstress it, because people had a lot of circumstances that got in the way of them fully attending school. All I can say is I have no interest in intention of punishing kids for any attendance related issues. We will have a policy where we will make it well known before school even begins. And then we will work with families who have circumstances that make it hard for them to live up to that policy. This is just a good example of where we will make every effort to be as flexible as possible. And again, we're not in the business of punishing kids for things that are out of their control.
Can parents choose which days their kids are in school? So if
Yes.
families have more than one child, they all come in on that
Yes.
same day?
Yes, and that's a good question and something I meant to speak to. Yes. So again, we have every intention of being accommodating and flexible for that reason. We know that families have kids in other schools and other grades. We know this is already hard to begin with. And if you have kids going to school on different days and you're juggling that, it's only going to make it harder for you. So as true partners in this work, you submit a proposal for what day works for you, and we will make it happen.
Okay. This is both a comment and a question. They feel schools are rushing the process because they feel schools need whatever funding they can get.
So the only thing I'll say, and I don't want to sound defensive, it's not schools. Schools are being asked to do a lot. And a lot of the heavy lifting, we say, or work is being done at the school level. I can tell you that. But rushing back to school is not one of the decisions we are making, and certainly is not a principal's responsibility to make that. That is a system decision. And I wish I had input on it, because I probably would agree with the sentiment behind that comment and that question. But that's not a school decision. All I can say is my parents, based on a survey, many of them feel that we are rushing to open schools, and I can share that information above and hope that somebody actually listens. And by the way, it's not just families, it's staff. If you notice around the country, many teacher groups, teacher unions, just teachers and other school staff are feeling very strongly about this idea of rushing back to school, mainly for political reasons that are like created by our president and our Secretary of Education. And I don't need to go into that anymore.
There's a safety question. They understand that temperatures will be checked. However, sometimes people don't have symptoms. So what's going to happen? Because
So in
they
that
have no
case-
symptoms.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's so many related questions that we could get into right now about what do you do when someone has symptoms, right, in that moment. And again, this is stuff that I am no medical professional. And I don't know exactly right now on July 21st what the answer to those questions are. But they must come up with answers to those questions because, for example, the New York City Teachers Union is insisting that these kinds of things be thought out and a plan be put in place before they agree to let anybody go back into the school buildings. And I think that's fair. I think we need those answers.
Okay. How are 5 or 6-year-olds or younger children going to be able to handle the fact that they cannot play and that they have to wear a mask?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same mask issue that I talked to about a minute ago. I don't know what it's going to be like for 5 or 6-year-olds to wear a mask. I don't know what it's going to be like for this 55-year-old to wear a mask all day. I think it's going to be a real struggle. Never ever in the history of schools, or at least not since 1918, have people been expected to do this. And so we're just going to have to see what it's going to be like and what it's going to take to either encourage or separate kids in a creative way that doesn't feel like punishment or defies the purpose of them coming into school. And yes, little kids need to play. And so we're going to have some classroom arrangement where the kids are like socially distanced from each other in the room, but able to play in the centers and other activities that the teachers set up for them.
Okay, will the city provide the UV lights or the disinfecting lights to cleanse the rooms?
I heard, but I cannot confirm yet, that we are supposed to get 2 devices that enable that kind of cleaning of surface areas in the building, including classrooms. I don't remember the name of the technology, whether it's UV light or something else, or some ionizer, but it's something that is supposed to make it easier to clean and do it in a much faster way.
Thank you. Will the school nurse give COVID tests if needed?
No, that's not something that schools are equipped to do. I wish it was. That's a good question. I wish we could do that.
If a student leaves their mask at home or they forget it, will the school provide them with one?
Absolutely.
What
But here,
about-
let me just say this. I don't know. Look, we were told we are going to get masks, hand sanitizers, cleaning solutions, wipes, whatever it is. We're supposed to get all that stuff, as per the chancellor made a promise to us. I take him at his word again on July 21st. What that looks like in terms of servicing 1,800 schools every day, I do not know. I want to be optimistic. We will do everything we can to supplement it, although we don't have a lot of money left in our budget for those kinds of things. But as I said in the very first minute of this conversation, the health and safety of everybody is our priority, and I mean it. And so if that means we beg, borrow, and steal like cleaning supplies to make sure people are safe, that's what we're going to do.
Okay, on a positive note, someone wants to know if they can order uniforms.
God bless you. No, I don't take, look, and I know, Mr. Menez, you're just messing with me, but I don't take any of this stuff as negative, right? These are all perfectly valid questions. They are the questions I have as a human being and as a parent and as a person who runs a school and is responsible for other people's children. I think all these questions are totally valid. They need to be asked. I wish I could give more information, but I can't. Going back to the uniform questions, yes, reach out to Miss Diaz, who's actually in the building many days this summer, and she will help you with ordering uniforms.
Okay. So just clarifying, is it a must or can that be held off because we don't know what the situation will be?
Say that again.
Okay, must they wear the uniforms or could that be held back a bit based on the current climate?
Yeah, please don't worry about things like uniforms. Honestly, like, yes, we would love our building and our school to continue business as usual, right? That's important to everybody, especially to kids, that there's a sense of normalcy, right? But on the other hand, we are dealing with so much harm and tragedy and trauma, each one of us in many different ways, that the last thing we're going to do is bother a kid or a family for not having a uniform in school, right? Sure, wear them if you can. If you can't, I'm sure we'll be fine.
Okay, will there be an increase in the janitorial services people?
Again, another fabulous question. I can't answer that. And here's the thing that I want to say, but I don't want to be quoted on it because it could be misunderstood. And that is, we are in really dire economic times, right? Our city just went through hell and back because of the COVID crisis. And every city agency's budget was significantly cut, including school budgets. So given that, we are now asked across the board to do so much more with less. That's true of the janitorial budget that our head custodian, Otis Penko, is in charge of. So at the same time, we need to do more. There's actually less money to do it with. So we are really looking for leadership in these times so that our mayor and others figure this out, like figure out how to do more with less or do more with more. Right? I would really appreciate a significant budget increase, not a decrease. So that's a long answer, but it's an important explanation to this question about janitorial services, right? We need more people in the building cleaning the classrooms. We need more supplies. That costs money. Where's the money going to come from?
Those were all the questions in the chat.
Okay. Listen, again, we're going to do this again on August 25th. I am always available. Like, I'm supposed to take vacation at some point, and I will, but I'm always available. I do not mind people reaching out to me directly. I can put my email into the chat box. You can reach out to me. I will do my best to answer not only your questions, but I will gather those questions and assume that other people have the same ones. And I will try to like continue to update the whole community, either through these town halls or through something that we post on the website.
Hi,
So,
Bill. We have
again,
another question that just came in. It's regarding the co-locate, the new school that's moving in. Are they still moving into the building?
Yes, they are. And thank you for bringing that up, because I know I mentioned it very briefly earlier, but we have been involved in an internal move that has been really difficult. Like, because we have another school coming into the building, because of the space they are taking, not by our choosing, and not their fault. This is just what the city has told both schools where we need to co-live in the building. It has forced us to move every one of our classrooms in the building. So every teacher has basically come in at risk on their own time and boxed up their rooms and prepared them for a move that mostly took place last week and is still sort of, being finished and is in process. Now, the reason this is a good question is because it also brings up very important considerations about how do we continue to socially distance and do everything that we said we need to do now with a whole nother population of people in our building. And many of you may know that we tried very hard to embrace the school coming in our building. That's not a bad thing, but we were hoping it would wait a year and that we could just wait until 2021-22 before they actually entered the building and took over the classrooms. That recommendation did not get honored. And so as far as we know, they're moving in for September.
Second part to that question from someone else. Will the dismissal and arrival times be changing?
That's another really good question, and something Ms. Medina and the rest of us are working on. So our arrival and dismissal time will be the same, 8:10 to 2:30. The other school is going to have to work around it and stagger their arrival and dismissal so it does not happen at the same time. Along with that, I want to say that one of the things we're working on is everybody knows that we open up the back of the building and I greet you there every morning. And everybody comes through that entrance, they get breakfast, they go to class, whatever. From now on, we are going to figure out how we're going to open up several different doors so we don't have people crowding through the same entrances. They'll pick up their food at whatever entrance they come in for breakfast, and then proceed to their classroom, again, spread out across the building. So yes, the arrival and dismissal times will be the same. You will find out before school starts which entrance of the building your kids will go in and out of, because it won't be through the back door only.
We have one more, Bill. They just keep coming
I don't mind.
in.
Listen,
Okay.
I can do this all night. I just feel bad for
Hey,
everybody else.
are there
listening to my voice.
any thoughts on the back to school supply list that are being sent out? If the idea is to be safer, disinfected, etc., will this then be added to classroom lists?
So that's another good question, and something that has been asked of me and I don't have a complete answer to yet, because one of the things that we have to think about is the stuff in classrooms that kids are touching. And it will be impossible for a janitor to come in every day and clean off every book, every pencil, every pencil sharpener, whatever, every day. And think about that being particularly true for the 3K and 4K and all the things that they play with. So with that in mind, you know, kids are really going to have their own supplies with them. We cannot provide everyday new supplies for every kid that they only touch once. We're happy to give out like a first set of whatever to every kid in the classroom, but they really need to have their own supplies. Now, we're not necessarily asking kids to bring in disinfectant or hand sanitizer or breath mints for that matter, but all that stuff is more than welcome. And I would encourage families, if they can, if they have the means, to provide as much of that stuff as possible for their kid and for their classroom if they're able to. Like we've done that with other things in the past, and so we're not shy to ask families for any kind of donation.
Okay. Someone wants to know, how has school safety changed, or how will it change?
No change as far as I know. Their roles are the same. They're not going to be the ones enforcing wearing of masks, if that's part of the question. Yeah, I think the only thing that might change is that because of a new school and because of a larger population of kids in the building, maybe we'll get a consistent second guard and perhaps a third guard. But then I think maybe, I don't know where this question's coming from, but possibly it has to do with de Blasio putting school safety back in the hands of DOE to make it look like there's cutting the police department's budget. That's a whole nother conversation, obviously. So as far as we're concerned, nothing changes. It's just their badges might look a little different or a little shinier.
Okay, that was the last question on the chat.
Okay. I'm just going to put my email in there. And again, if anybody wants to reach out to me directly, feel free. And again, I just want to say thank you. It looks like a lot of people are still on this call. And I really want to say thank you to all the staff. There's quite a few staff who are here. Of course, you don't have to be. But like everybody else, you're sort of waiting on pins and needles to get information about what's going to happen in the fall. And as you know, I try to keep you as up to date as possible, but things are changing and things are not changing in the sense of answering the big questions that we all want answers to. So again, I appreciate everybody being on the call. Reach out to me if you need to. And we will see everybody hopefully back here on August 25th, unless there's some emergency, a need for an emergency meeting, like a big decision was made about closing schools or fully opening schools or whatever. I will call like an emergency meeting and get that information out to everybody. So that concludes our meeting. Again, thank you. And please take care of yourselves. And I really do miss your children. And I want to see them as soon as possible. So let's hope that happens in September, at least to some degree. Okay, have a good night, everybody.